talk about reintegration, children soldiers in Sierra Leone. So the two organizations we'll be talking about is War Child and UNICEF, because we want to provide long-term programs that give former children soldiers resources such as physical, mental, educational, and youth programs. Because in the past, a lot of these organizations just only focused on disarming armed forces during the Sierra Leone Civil War. Now after the war, it's time to focus on programs that will help these children reintegrate back into society. Like I said, a lot of these in the past, a lot of these programs only focus on disarming armed forces in Sierra Leone's Civil War. Sierra Leone Civil War was an 11-year war that actually happened because their neighbor countries, Liberia's conflict spilled over to Sierra Leone. And one of the biggest groups that was a part of this was called the Revolutionary United Front, which was led by former Corporal Fude Sanko, who was in collaboration with former President Charles Taylor, who led the National Patriotic Front of Liberia. Charles Taylor was a corrupted leader. He caused a lot of these conflicts. Not only that, he stole from the government, he embezzled over $1 million from Liberia. And with the support, with RUF and the support of Charles Taylor and Charles Taylor providing them resources, the RUF just spread across Sierra Leone, claiming territory as well as recruiting children such through threats, abduction, killing, and raping. And there was a peace agreement called the Abidjan Agreement, but it wasn't successful. And a lot of these other military coups were rising and seizing power within Sierra Leone. But it wasn't until July 1999 where the Lomé Agreement was created. This was a power sharing plan where with rebels in the government, including RUF. However, this plan required rebels, including RUF, to surrender their weapons. And not only that, there was a lot of resentment towards this plan because other rebel groups were not involved. Some of them didn't like what the agreement contained of. So there was more attacks and more killings. It wasn't until May 2000 where Sanko was captured, and this was what really de-escalated the war. Because in 2001, a year after, the United Nations in Sierra Leone worked to implement a compromise within the Lomé Agreement. Not only that, the British peace troops came and started securing back the country. And then in 2002, the war ended. The main three reasons that the Civil War occurred was because of resources, weak governments, and unemployment. I say with these reasons, it was a lot of people were driven by greed and grievances. I say this because, for example, Sierra Leone is known for their diamonds, and a lot of the leaders and business people wanted to control this market. Another example for the weak governments is that there was a lot of budget cuts in health and education, and with that, a lot of the young adult population was marginalized. They were the group that was most affected by this, because it didn't provide them any opportunities in employment because they didn't have the proper skills and proper education to have them be in the workforce. So why am I talking about this? Why am I talking about this with children soldiers? It's because a lot of these rebel groups, including RUF, were formed by these young adult groups, especially RUF, and these groups were pretty much manipulating these children to say, we are fighting for your future, and we want you to participate in fighting for this better future. So with that, 10,000 children were involved, and with that, a lot of them had to do a lot of things that they didn't want to do. This includes killing their loved ones and neighborhood friends, chopping off body parts of these people and burning down towns, including raping girls that were young or older than them. And a lot of these children were sexually abused, and for example, these girls became bushwives. Bushwives are pretty much girls who are informally attached to male soldiers for their own purposes and for sexual purposes. And these children took a lot of drugs and consumed a lot of drugs and alcohol. And there was a study right after test that 273 former soldiers were diagnosed with depression and anxiety. Girls reported with clinical ranges of depression, while the boys reported with vulnerability. So why is this important? A lot of these children went through a lot of psychological and physical trauma, and after the war, it's now thinking about how to cope and move forward, because even after the war, these children are facing a lot of backlash. For example, communities from their town, communities do not want them back. These communities are terrified by them, and they just don't want them. So with that, our organizations want to help provide long-term programs to help reintegrate these children back into society, back into a normal life. What I mean by normal life is living a life that doesn't deal with conflict. And I'm going to show you an example in a 2-minute video of what I mean by living a life that allows them going back to society. I know, I'm done.